Hello everyone, Benji-Sales here, and on this seemingly what would be an uneventful Tuesday, we have our very first PlayStation 5 details almost out of nowhere, right? So Sony provided this information to Wired.com, so make sure to go to the site and read the article, to give them the full support. But I did want to break out some of the stuff here and talk about, the overall strategy, what's happening with the PlayStation 5, as well as how it's going to affect sales. So I'm not shocked that we're getting PlayStation 5 details this year at all, but I am surprised that it's coming this early and in this method. So for those of you that follow me on Twitter or on forums or on YouTube know, I've been fully expecting Microsoft to have a E3 blowout of their next generation plans, right? And I don't think it's just going to be Microsoft going on stage and saying, hey, we have a next gen platform in development, here's a couple specs. Kind of like what they did last year at E3, but just with a little bit more details. I think this is going to be a blowout. I think you're going to see Microsoft come on stage and flat out show next generation games. That's right. I think you're going to see next gen games in June. So this is really being announced, I think, so early by Sony for two reasons. Specifically, first, to undercut that messaging, right? Had they been silent, had they been quiet, kind of like how they've been lately, almost to the point where it's starting to upset some of the PlayStation fan base because they are so low-key right now. Had they not gone out and started talking about this and just let Microsoft go crazy at E3, there would just be even more questions building up about what exactly Sony's plans are moving forward. So I think this was a very smart move by them. It allows them to get into that next generation messaging as well and not let Microsoft just run crazy with next gen details and get all of that mind share, right? Sony's here saying, hey, we're here too. We have a next generation platform. It's very powerful, and they're going to be being discussed, just right there with Microsoft. So I don't think we're getting quite the details out of Sony as we're going to get from over at Microsoft. Like I said, I think they're going to show us actual next gen footage. But yeah, and the second reason I think you're seeing this announced so early is kind of what Cerny notes in the article is that a lot of dev kits are now being pushed out, right, to various developers and publishers. This is another thing I've been talking about online a lot, is that there are many next generation games in development. This isn't a case of like there's one or two first party titles that are being made right now for next generation platforms in mind. There are numerous, both in first parties as well as third parties. So that information was going to leak out, right? As these dev kits become more and more common, it's inevitable. So had Sony not come out, got this messaging across, hey, here's the specs, here's what we want them to do, some of that information may have been miscommunicated, right? Going through the telephone leaking game, it happens all of the time. So, this is Sony getting out ahead of that and being like, hey, here's what's in the platform. Here's what we want it to do. Here's, straight from the horse's mouth exactly what our plan is. So, I think that's also smart because it's not getting into the shadowy area where things can very easily be miscommunicated. We have a very firm grasp around the general, we don't get the super in-depth details on this machine and the strategies, but we do get, a lot, right? We can take a lot away from this in terms of knowing exactly what the PS5 is. So I think those are, like I said, the two real reasons that you're getting this on this random Tuesday. I thought this was going to come a lot later in the year, right? I thought they were going to be quiet during E3 still. I thought that they were going to kind of let Microsoft get out there and give their plans and then announce later in the year, more around the time where they traditionally do that PSX time frame, right? So I was expecting a somewhat late in 2019 announcement from them, but they come out guns blazing early, which is smart. They undercut Microsoft here big time. So yeah, that's kind of the overall idea about why I think you're getting this announcement right now. And then, we're going to dive into some of the specs behind this machine. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about how this actually affects sales, right? The direct impact on the Xbox One sales, PlayStation 4 sales, and Nintendo Switch sales. All right, so let's dive a little bit deeper into the actual specs and strategy of this console. So first of all, it features a Zen 2 based CPU, so from AMD. That to me is the biggest upgrade in this machine. Cerny seems to think that it's the SSD, so we'll also go into that. This console does feature a SSD, which is huge as well. But I lean more towards it being the Zen. Now, he's the system architect. He's far more intelligent than me, some guy sitting here just talking to you about sales. But, he leans on the SSD. Just from my cursory knowledge, to me, the CPU is a bigger upgrade just because, the Bulldozer CPUs that were in the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One held back a lot of games, right? That's what AMD had ready when Xbox One and PS4 were set to launch. They just didn't have anything else ready at the time that they could get into those machines for the price that was needed, for the capacity that was needed. So Bulldozers is what we ended up with, and those CPUs held back a lot of games, right? It's kind of well documented. So the Zen 2, it's an enormous upgrade. It is gigantic. So, I think you're going to see some drastic improvements in games just from that alone. Now, like I said, the SSD, this is what Cerny really highlights in this article, and he talks at length about it. So I'm not going to go into all the details here. Like I said, make sure you click the Wired article. But yeah, things like, decreased load times, right? One example they give is that in Spider-Man, they're running Spider-Man PS4 on it, and the load times went from 15 seconds on the PlayStation 4 down to less than a second, 0.8 seconds on the PS5 dev kit that they're running. So that's pretty wild, right? You're going to see massively reduced load times through putting an SSD in there. And also the other thing is, you can load assets in quicker. So they were talking about how they can make the camera move quicker and things like that because they don't have to wait in terms of loading things in. Now, we don't get any details about RAM, which is also important for things like that. We aren't sure how much RAM is in the PS5, what type of RAM it is. So they don't go into that. So that's one thing that we don't know here. And yeah, in terms of the GPU, it is Navi based off of AMD's Navi technology. And the other big highlight is ray tracing. So some people might be surprised ray tracing is in this machine. I'm not at all. It's going to be in the Xbox One as well. Once Epic and other companies started really talking about ray tracing, about a year ago, you started seeing a lot of demos and things like that. It seemed pretty clear to me that they were showing, they're foreshadowing that ray tracing was going to be in the next generation platforms. You don't get the industry talking so much about a technology unless, word behind the scenes is that it's coming into next gen consoles. So this isn't a new technology. It's existed for some time, but even high-end PCs haven't been really capable of it until recently. So it is new in terms of being able to be taken advantage of in games. So that's huge. It's going to make lighting way more realistic. Now, that's kind of the nitty-gritty details. They don't talk about PSVR 2. It is coming. I'll tell you, there is going to be a next generation PlayStation VR headset, but they do talk about that the regular PlayStation VR headset, so the standard set that you have right now does work on it, so that's very cool. Probably because I'm guessing that the main reason that this is a thing is this shows to me PSVR 2 is not going to be ready at launch, right? So they want you to still be able to utilize your VR games, your VR library. They want you to still be able to do that. And VR 2, that's what this says to me. It's not going to be ready at launch. So the VR headset you have now works. Now, in terms of strategy, nothing super crazy here, nothing super out of nowhere. It seems to be a very traditional console. It's still going to support physical media. It's not digital only. I won't be surprised if eventually you get a digital-only version of it, but the actual regular PlayStation 5 at launch is going to support physical media. We don't get any really details on services. They're still holding that back. This seems to be, a pretty straightforward next-generation console. So that, to me, isn't crazy shocking. As Matt Piscatella pointed out on Twitter, the way he phrased it is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And yeah, that seems to be a case here. Sony's still all in on a very powerful platform. And yeah, there's not a ton else there to break out just because we don't get a ton on strategy, right? Like I said, it's really more of a specs overview, this article, than Sony really talking about, hey, here's how PSN is going to change. Here's how services are going to change. Here's how, subscriptions are going to change, or all kinds of other things, right? We're not seeing them come out and be like, hey, VR, this whole console's built around VR, or, hey, this console is a streaming device. It's, it's a pretty straightforward next-gen platform, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Look at how aggressively strong PS4 sales are, right? That they don't need to take crazy risks, right? They just need to deliver a very powerful next-gen platform, and it seems like that's exactly what they've done. So let's talk about how this is going to impact sales. All right, one important piece of information of all this is, of course, that the PlayStation 5 is not coming in 2019. It's coming in 2020. They don't say that year, but that's when it's coming, right? That's when the next-gen Xbox is coming as well. 2020 is when next-gen begins. So how is that going to affect sales in 2019? We have PlayStation, details out there in the wild now. We're going to have Xbox details in June. So a lot of people have been thinking, they can't announce these consoles this year, right? Well, they're going to wait until next year. I've always assumed that we're getting both of them announced this year, and for one really important reason, right? I've talked about this online a lot. This isn't going to really hurt PlayStation 4 and Xbox One sales, not in a massive way. The people that are going out and buying PS4s and Xbox Ones this late in the cycle, right? We're not early. We are so late. These consoles have been around for so long. And the vast majority of people that are buying systems now are not the people that go out and pre-order a PS5 on day one with an extra controller and 5 games to go along with it, right? These are people that are trying to get in at cheaper prices, or when a library is more established, things like that. This isn't your day one adopters that are out there buying PS4s and Xbox Ones. So I don't think it actually really hurts current gen sales that much. I'll be shocked if you see just huge dips now moving forward. I expected the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One to be down in sales this year anyways, right? I've been forecasting that all year. They were down in January, they were down in February, they're going to be down most months of the year. So you are going to see those consoles sliding this year, but I don't think that has anything to do with the next gen announcement. Now maybe you see, small hit. I won't be surprised if this has a small detrimental effect, but this isn't any kind of massive effect, right? Especially because this also says to me a PS4 price drop is imminent. We are going to see the PS4 permanently cut price, I think, pretty soon. So it might not be a month, might not be 2 months, but I think, within the next 6 months, you're going to see the PS4 get a permanent price reduction, especially since, next gen's only a year away. They can only write out $300 for so long. You're already starting to see it slow. So I don't know if it'll be $100 cut. Maybe they just take it down to $249.99 permanently, something like that, and maybe put the Pro at $349.99. But I am expecting that. I am expecting a permanent price drop on the PlayStation 4 platform. In terms of Xbox One, this doesn't really affect much because how should I phrase this? The people that are going out and buying Xboxes primarily are the Xbox audience. So, I'm trying to be kind here in kind of how I phrase that. There's not a lot of people, PlayStation 4 is the leader, right? It is the industry leader. So that has become the kind of de facto system to go for, right? In the US, things are definitely closer than they are worldwide, right? Xbox One is competitive there, but you don't see a lot of people going out and really debating between PS4 and Xbox One and then just buying an Xbox One. Usually people that are buying Xboxes, that's their goal, right? They're going out, they want an Xbox, whether it's to get Game Pass, whether it's to play Halo. A lot of them are already PS4 owners as well. They're picking up for a secondary console, or they just really like the Xbox brand. But like I said, it's not one of those situations where it's like, oh man, I was going to buy an Xbox, but now I'm going to wait for a PlayStation 5. So, it doesn't really affect Xbox sales, I don't think, much at all. Now, maybe in June, depending on what Microsoft talks about there, that might a little bit. But this news doesn't really have a huge effect on the Xbox sales. In terms of Switch, this just leaves the door wide open for the Nintendo Switch to be 2019's best-selling platform. It was going to be anyways, but, now knowing that these consoles are on the horizon, like I said, this might have a slight decrease on sales for PS4. I don't think it's going to be huge, but it might a little bit. So, the door's just wide open now for Switch to really run away with 2019 in a big way. Now, maybe some crazy price promotions during the end of the year can help PlayStation 4 be more competitive with it, but I think it's pretty clear now that 2019 is going to be all about the Switch in terms of hardware sales. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers most of my thoughts around this. Like I said, you're going to see a lot more next-gen stuff throughout the year now. You're going to start seeing games, right? Especially now that the details are out there. That means even third parties can start talking, right? So whenever a platform has not even been announced, you can't be a third party and just be like, oh, hey, by the way, I got PS5 games in development. You know, it doesn't work like that. We have seen situations like Watch Dogs was, where they show a game and it's kind of like, who knows what platforms it's going to be on. So, you know, you do have a history of that, but now that this is out there and now that the, you know, Xbox news is going to be out there in June, third parties, you know, you can just go wild. You know, Assassin's Creed Vikings, if you want to start showing that game, you probably don't because it's not coming until next year. But hey, if you want to start showing Vikings, go for it. You totally can. Or Harry Potter, if you want to start showing some footage, if you want to get your official Harry Potter game out there, hey, now's the time. These consoles are out in the wild in terms of being announced now. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up. I am Benji-Sales. Thank you everyone for watching the video. Like I said, this was kind of impromptu. I did not expect the news to hit this morning, so sorry I don't have a super detailed video for you. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and follow me on Twitter at Benji-Sales. Thanks for watching, everyone.